everyone, I hope you're well. Today we're going to be steering away from my usual content where I talk about how to become a lawyer, whether or not you should become a lawyer, law school tips, yada yada yada. And we're going to be talking about why Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney. So we'll be taking a look at the complaint, the allegations made in the complaint, and as usual I will be linking to every single thing that I mentioned in the description down below. If you're new here, hi, my name's Aisha. I'm a lawyer and entrepreneur based in Montreal, Canada, and I make videos about productivity, entrepreneurship, law student tips, becoming a lawyer, and all of those good things. So why is Scarlett Johansson suing Disney? Johansson is suing Disney because of a breach of contract in relation to the Black Widow movie. First things first, let's look at the timeline. Johansson and Marvel signed an agreement dated as of May 9th, 2017. Now this date is very important because at the time, Disney Plus did not exist. Disney Plus was launched in November of 2019. The agreement that both parties signed stated the following, and I quote, "Lender shall furnish producer the services of artists to perform the role of Black Widow / Natasha Romanova in the theatrical motion picture currently entitled Black Widow, the picture. For the avoidance of doubt, if producer in its sole discretion determines to release the picture, then such release shall be a white theatrical release of the picture, i.e. no less than 1,500 screens." Just to be clear here, the lender refers to the company through which Johansson offers her services, artist refers to Johansson, and producer refers to Marvel. In this agreement, Johansson was promised, on top of her fixed compensation, bonuses that were tied to box office ticket sales. Now, this means that on top of her fixed compensation, she was supposed to receive certain amounts of money if ticket sales reach certain thresholds. And from what the complaint says, these bonuses made up the majority of Johansson's compensation. As I said, this agreement was dated as of 2017. A few months before Disney Plus launched, Disney's then CEO, during a shareholders meeting, said that all of Disney's feature films were going to be on Disney Plus, and that all of Disney's theatrical releases for 2019 were also going to be made available on Disney Plus after their theatrical run. So when Johansson's team found out about those statements, they apparently reached out to Marvel just to make sure that it wasn't going to have an impact on the wide theatrical release that was planned in the agreement that they had signed. And according to the complaint, this is what Marvel's chief counsel responded in the email. Further to our conversation today, it is 100% our plan to do a typical wide release of Black Widow. We have very high expectations for the film and are very excited to try to do for Black Widow what we've just done with Captain Marvel. We totally understand that Scarlett's willingness to do the film and her whole deal is based on the premise that the film would be widely theatrically released like her other pictures. We understand that should the plan change, we would need to discuss this with you and come to an understanding, as the deal is based on a series of very large box office bonuses. Fast forward to 2020, Black Widow is scheduled to be released on May 1st, 2020. Doesn't happen. The release keeps getting delayed because of the pandemic. September 2020, they announced that Black Widow is going to be released exclusively in theaters on May 7th, 2021. Finally, on March 23rd, 2021, Disney announces that Black Widow will be released on July 9th, 2021 in theaters as well as on Disney Plus Premier Access. Johansson says that her representatives reached out to Marvel to come to an agreement, but that outreach was apparently completely ignored, and Black Widow ended up getting released in theaters and on Disney Plus Premier Access on July 9th, 2021. So first things first, and this is honestly the first question that I asked myself when I learned about this lawsuit before actually reading the lawsuit, and that is, why is Johansson suing Disney if her contract is with Marvel? And this is actually something that is explained quite well in the complaint. In the complaint, Johansson claims that had it not been for Disney's interference, Marvel would not have breached the agreement. Johansson says that had it not been for Disney, her team would have been able to sit down with Marvel and actually come to an understanding, which is something that they had seemed to be open to based on the email that I read previously. Johansson further claims that Marvel had absolutely no incentive to breach the agreement nor to collude with Disney, and that, on the contrary, they would have wanted to maximize ticket sales. Now, on what basis does Johansson claim that the contract was breached? Their agreement heavily relies on the definition of theatrical release. Johansson claims that a theatrical release refers to an exclusive release in theaters for an extended period of time, roughly between 90 and 120 days. So, how did they come up with that definition? Two things. First, trade usage. In the complaint, they claim that everyone, which means Johansson, Johansson's team, Marvel, Disney, as well as everyone in Hollywood, understand that a theatrical release means an exclusive release in theaters for a certain period of time. That's how the term is commonly defined in the industry, that's how it's commonly defined in their trade, and therefore that is what it means. And that is the understanding that both parties had of that term. The second element that they're bringing up in the complaint is past releases from Marvel. In the complaint, they mention that Marvel's previous releases had all had theatrical windows that were consistent with industry standards, with an average of 117 days. And when it comes to Marvel movies that Johansson starred in, they claim that none of the 7 movies that Johansson was in had a theatrical window that was shorter than 96 days, and that for all of them it took between 6 to 8 months for those movies to actually be released on streaming platforms. Now, why does this even make a difference for Johansson? As mentioned previously, on top of her fixed compensation, she had bonuses that were tied to ticket sales. That means that the better the ticket sales were, the more money she made. But the simultaneous release of Black Widow on Disney Plus Premier Access and in theaters cannibalized the revenue that Johansson could have made. Let's look at why. Johansson first claims that the release on Disney Plus Premier Access actually steered away consumers from theaters to the streaming platform. In the complaint, Johansson claims that as predicted, box office receipts for the opening weekend were significantly lower than usual compared to previous Marvel movies. Another interesting thing that was brought up in the complaint is that having the movie on Disney Plus Premier Access actually prevented Johansson from benefiting from repeat views. Usually, if a movie is only in theaters and someone wants to see the movie one more time, they would buy an additional ticket. There really is no way around it. But with Disney Plus Premier Access's model, you just have to pay one time the fee to access the movie, and then you can watch it as many times as you want to, really, as long obviously as you are a Disney Plus subscriber. Another interesting thing that was brought up in the complaint is that some people aren't going to do either. A lot of people aren't going to pay the $30 to access the movie on Disney Plus Premier Access, and they're not going to pay to go see it in theaters if they already have a Disney Plus subscription. They're just going to wait a couple of months and watch the movie as part of the subscription that they're already paying for, which once again would mean less money for Johansson, at least when it comes to those bonuses. Now, Johansson claims that because all of this, the release on Disney Plus Premier Access as well as in theaters actually cannibalized the revenue that she could have made. It has been reported that the simultaneous release of Black Widow in movie theaters and on Disney Plus Premier Access made her lose around $50 million in revenue. Obviously, the only information that we have now is the information that we have in the complaint, which means the information that we get from one side, so Johansson's side. So obviously we're gonna have to wait and see how all of this evolves. Disney did issue a public statement in response to the lawsuit. They mentioned that the lawsuit had no merit, obviously, but also, interestingly enough, that a part of Johansson's compensation did come from Disney Plus. Now, if this is true, I find it interesting that it hasn't been brought up in the complaint. I guess we'll learn more about this as the situation evolves. But to be honest, regardless of what happens with this case, the sole fact that this lawsuit exists is going certainly to have an impact on what is happening in the industry. I am sure that talent and the representatives are going to be a lot more careful about how certain terms are defined in their agreements. I also think that now that streaming is a very big part of our lives, that talent and the representatives are going to make sure that, you know, movie stars heavily benefit from revenue that comes from streaming platforms. I also have a feeling that we're going to be seeing similar lawsuits in the future. It has been reported that Emma Stone is currently weighing her options and looking into possibly suing Disney, because the exact same thing happened to her with Cruella. Obviously, she starred in Cruella that was released not too long ago. It was released in theaters and it was also released on Disney Plus Premier Access at the same time. And it has also been reported that Emily Blunt, who starred in, what was it, in Jungle Cruise, is also looking into her options. So that's definitely going to be very interesting. I'm also curious to see what you guys think. Do you guys think that this lawsuit has any merit? What do you guys think is going to happen? Do you think we're going to be seeing more lawsuits? I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to think about this, so do not hesitate to leave a comment below. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, do not hesitate to subscribe and to like this video, and I will be seeing you very soon. Bye!